Comrades, friends, fellow workers, what a year this has been. What a tumultuous time that we are living in right now. And when I think about the theme for this year's convention, Our Time Is Now, I also have to think about what that means in these particularly difficult times for workers. You've heard me say it a lot, that relationships are built at the speed of trust, and that social change is built at the speed of relationships. And that has never been more true or more necessary than it is right now. Because our time, this moment, this now, is one of deliberate attempts to disconnect us from one another, to disenfranchise one another, while enriching others, to demoralize us, to undermine our faith in the democratic institutions that bind us together, and to challenge the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. So when I say our time is now, it's because this is when unions, when solidarity is more important than ever, and when each and every one of us in this room is called to our higher purpose, to be better, to be bolder, to be stronger. And we often say in the labor movement, and it seems empty sometimes when you say it, that an injury to one is an injury to all. Martin Luther King Jr. took that one step further, saying, quote, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality," end quote. It is a recognition that not only is the labor of all of the world's workers profoundly intertwined, but because in a real sense, all life, all of our lives are interrelated. We are tethered to one another, not just by our roles as union members, but by our participation in our communities, our family structures, our cultural connections, our inescapable network of interdependence. And so this is how I want to begin reflecting on our year together with all of you here today. Our deep, our inescapable interconnectedness, whether we like it or not. Because this has been an exceptional year for us. This marks 50 years since we transitioned from the Civil Service Association of Ontario to the union we now know as OPSEU SEFPO. That name change in 1975 reflected our new identity. It reflected our growing influence, not just as staunch defenders of government workers, but as a force to be reckoned with across every branch of the broader public sector in Ontario, especially as the government abdicated its responsibility to Ontarians by dismantling and underfunding our social safety net piece by piece by piece. This is a process that has been sped up significantly under the Ford government. Yet, my friends, nonetheless, we have persisted. We've spent the last 5 decades coming together to advance the rights of workers, bolster our communities, and to build a stronger, more inclusive labor movement. Whether through strikes, days of action, political education, we have shown up for one another time and again. We've stretched the bounds of our comfort zones. We've improved our relationships to build a stronger, longer-lasting, worker-led movement for change. We've been driven not just by the need to win, but by the more difficult call to show up for one another, especially when it's least comfortable. And I couldn't be prouder of our shared legacy or more excited about the decades that are ahead of us. The momentum of our change and the tenor of our transformation haven't slowed a bit. We've continued to grow our ranks, welcoming tens of thousands of workers this past year alone into OPSEU SEFPO. Oh wait, it gets better. We are now an OPSEU SEFPO of over 200,000 workers. And here's where we get to test my middle-aged brain. I'm going to give a shout out to each and every new bargaining unit, welcome them into our family, but also honor what it took to get here today and the strength of their organizing efforts. If you hear yourselves, give yourselves a round of applause. Dave Smith Youth Treatment Center. Ontario Lottery Gaming Corporation Prize Center. Safety Net Security. Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital. Bayshore Home Care Solutions. Carpenter Hospice. Don Valley Community Legal Services. Human Rights Legal Support Center, Maryvale, North Wellington Healthcare Corporation, nice, well done, the Salvation Army Toronto Grace Health Center, St. Joseph's Healthcare London, St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital, Trillium Health Partners, Université d'Erst, William Osler Health System, Ontario's Coroners, and for the first time in Ontario's history, after a 20-year battle that marks both the beginning of my activism in this union, 16,000 part-time and sessional college faculty members. Organizing with your coworkers and building this kind of transformative solidarity from the ground up takes extraordinary effort and grit from workers and staff alike. Everybody in this room knows it, and our union is stronger with each new member who joins us. But growth is more than just about increasing our numbers. It's also about building our power. 2024 was a year of extraordinary wins for OPSEU members, OPSEU SEFPO members. It was a year of new paths forged and new visions that have been articulated. We've deepened our class solidarity. We've taken strategic risks together, and we've built stronger bonds with our labor allies. We are no longer an island. As organizers, we've dug in for the long haul. We've connected across our many differences because we can feel the ways that our lives and our fates are interconnected. We're bigger and more resilient than we've ever been, and OPSEU SEFPO is prepared to take on any threat that lies ahead of us through solidarity and through struggle. We're also trying new strategies and tactics and coming together like never before. This year, we overhauled the bargaining program to better reflect the standards that you've set. And this is going to help us steer through all our future negotiations. We hear you loud and clear that you are capable of and deserving of more, and staff want to help you get there. The methods that are being outlined in our updated bargaining protocols, they've grown out of the simple principle that one-on-one conversations matter, that those are what are critical for change. And we've seen this the world over, that high participation is the source of worker power. And with this new bargaining training in hand, we're better equipped to tap into that power, to harness it, to channel it for the betterment of all workers. Our dismantling systemic racism training is also a tool for action and for change. The inequities, the divisions that are caused by systemic racism and colonialism have never served the workers' movement. And we're taking concrete action to make sure that we are rebuilding our relationships from a place of trust, centering reciprocity, and to do things differently every step of the way so that we can truly achieve justice for all. We've seen what can happen when we engage community members, parents, students, and other allies to build strength and sustain our momentum when we raise the bar for ourselves and our union siblings. We can demand, but we can also win more. And everything we have won as workers, the weekend, parental leave, higher wages, workplace safety, you name it, has been a matter of rights that we have fought for, not charity. There is no government, least of all this government, who will give us what we demand without a fight. But if OPSEU members have done anything this year, it's demonstrate to those in power that when we fight, we win. This is our moment as people who believe in the transformative power of solidarity to galvanize one another toward a better world, a freer world. And we made significant strides over this past year. We saw the success of LBED reverberate across this province, a historic 97% strike mandate with over 8,000 members working together to build a threat this government felt. Our LBED comrades educated the public about the risk of privatization, but about the funded services that their work makes possible every day. They held their lines, they built new relationships in communities, and they won a commitment to continue to grow with the province for years to come. Because for too long in Ontario, public has meant underfunded and neglected. And we've seen this reflected in the wages of public sector workers, in anti-worker legislation like Bill 124, and in the rampant privatization of our services. And we can only expect this to accelerate as governments and their corporate buddies use the tariff crisis as an excuse to restructure our economies in ways that we have fought against. Their plans would leave workers and our families laboring for longer and for less while the rich line their pockets. But enough is enough. Friends, if they refuse to govern well, then we will become ungovernable. This is a time to take to the streets. This is a time to stand strong and in solidarity. This is a time to organize collectively. And this year, we launched the Worth Fighting For campaign, a cross-sectoral effort to bring together dozens of bargaining units in the broader public service as a united front to target the real employer and funder, the provincial government and the Treasury Board. These workers are fighting alongside of one another in an incredible act of solidarity to achieve higher wages, better working conditions, and stable jobs. And the strategy is simple. This government can isolate and ignore one or two small bargaining units. But when we coordinate our fight, our strike deadlines, and our power, we are unstoppable. These units in the BPS are showing us that together we have the power to shut it down, and it is truly all of us or none of us. Government neglect hurts our members and has deadly consequences for our communities, and our friends across the labor movement feel this pain. They're on the front lines right alongside of us, and they're joining us in this fight. There's a tremendous amount of work ahead of us to come together to out-organize the enemies of labor. But we are well on our way to victory with workers like all of us in this room at the helm. We have an extraordinary year of bargaining ahead of us. Literally 3/4 of our union is at a bargaining table this year. That is 3/4 of our collective force working together to push the needle and to advance the labor movement, to test the limits about what workers in Ontario are capable of winning. This includes all of the colleges, support and academic, full-time and part-time. These workers are facing unprecedented job loss and program cuts by this government, and these attacks on public education will be felt by our communities for generations to come. But shame indeed. It is an existential crisis in the colleges, but college workers are on the forefront of the fight for good jobs and thriving communities. I just want to give a shout out to my comrades over at Local 238 at Conestoga College as one example where we had a president of Conestoga College, John Tibbetts, who makes over $600,000 a year, and over the past few days issued layoff notices to 180 workers, support staff at that college. We're going to take this fight directly to John Tibbetts. And to support our fight, we've increased staffing. We've added 15 new permanent positions in this year's budget alone to bolster your efforts on the ground. That's on top of 47 permanent positions that we've added over the past 3 years. And while we certainly have work still to do, we're heading together in the right direction, growing our union not just systemically, but strategically. We've incorporated the strategic plan into our decision-making, and we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary of our 7 new equity board members. There are 3 simple questions that guide every decision that I've taken in this role. How does this help build worker power? How does this align with our values? And how does this bring us closer together? And my friends, we need each other now more than ever. None of us is an island. The solidarity that we have worked to build over this last year, the solidarity that brought each of you to convention this week, begins with paying attention to another person, feeling implicated in each other's struggles. As Angela Davis has said, if they come for me in the morning, they will come for you at night, and they are on our doorstep now. We have a federal election in a few days, and the sober truth is that we are on the precipice of a very different world. A pivotal moment in labor history, but also a pivotal moment in the future of our democracy. There's a philosopher, Chris Jami, who's got this book, Healology, and he talks about what's happening in politics in North America right now, and he says, quote, that the problem is that politics has been made a sport, almost as much a sport as football or baseball. And when it comes to politics, politicians and adults do more finger pointing and play more games than children ever do. And too often we are rooting for the pride of a team rather than the good of the nation. When we think about what happens when politics becomes a sport rather than a way to create and govern a just society that benefits all, that's when we lose sight of each other's humanity. Our value as individual people who are all just trying to get by together. We come to believe that there's a winner and a loser, and that's the only way it can be. And then we become sorely tempted to side with the winner no matter what the cost. And if we look at what's happening in the US right now, you know I've made jokes with many of you about the deranged Dorito running amok down there. And I'm originally an American, proudly Canadian now. And we say elbows up, and we mean it, because we need to protect our sovereignty. But our friends to the south are having their labor rights hacked apart, their families separated, their dignity stripped. And those workers are our allies, our union siblings, but they're also the canaries in the coal mine about what's coming for us if we are not ready to fight to protect our values as trade unionists, but also as decent human beings. We've got a whole slew of people here, my friends, who would like to see those systems replicated in Canada, the fascism imported into our workplaces, our homes, and our communities. And I feel a profound obligation to those workers and workers anywhere who are facing the creeping threat of tyranny, not just as a union president, not just as a public sector worker, but as a college faculty member, a parent, and your neighbor. The work of making connections now is a practical necessity because we need each other to survive. Let me be really clear. Your enemy isn't an immigrant. It's not a trans person. It's not a student. It is not a racialized person. Your enemies are the people who are building and sustaining these systems of oppression that have each and every one of us caught in their teeth. And now is the time to be hard on issues, but soft on people. And I'm going to level with you. You're not going to like everyone that you organize with. You might not even like me. And that's cool. But we need to seek the threads that will bind us together nonetheless across those differences, across those base urges. We need to harness the rage that each of us feels for the CEO, the landlord, the politician, the techno-bro oligarch to fuel our collective fire. Because a divided solidarity is no solidarity at all, and we cannot become isolated activists because that's what they want. We cannot just advocate for wages in our workplaces while the communities around us are dismantled service by service, affordable home by affordable home. So I'm going to ask one thing of you over the next 3 days, just one thing. Start a conversation. Make it a meaningful, a purposeful, a deliberate conversation. Make it one that challenges you in a new way, in a good way, that gets you outside of your current channels of thought. One that begins with the goal of building our power together. Because each of us has power as a union member, as a community leader, and as an organizer. And ask yourself, what are you going to do with your power to make your part of the world just a little bit better and a little bit easier for the person sitting next to you? Imagine the world that you want to live in, the world we deserve to live in together. Start talking about what we can do, what we can actually do to make that world a reality. Because another world, one in which workers' rights are foundational, in which social justice is our guiding principle, and in which care for people, not profit, drives our economy, that world is possible, and we're going to get out there and build it together. In the timeless words of world builder activist Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it is done. And my friends, we are the public sector. We know how to fight. We know how to win. And our time is now.